In my first year, as I have, by the way, explained earlier, high school consisted of 7 years of education. Elementary school was 4, so we had total of 11 years uh, of education when we matriculated. That's how it was called in those days. In my first year in high school, I was number 8th in class. Then something very nice happened in second year. I believe I had a very nice teacher. He is still alive, may God bless him. His name was Madad Ali Qadri. Now I remember in one of the regular quizzes, I had done reasonably well. And when I got my paper back, it showed like I had 90 marks on the test out of 100. But when I looked inside and totaled up all the marks I had, maybe I had 70 or 75, certainly not the 90 that showed at the top. Now I was in a dilemma. Should I go to the teacher and say that you have given me more credit than I deserve? Or the second thing inside me told me to keep quiet, but to work harder so that second time I will really deserve 90 that I got this time. And this is the route I followed. I started working harder. The result was at the end of the year, I think I came second in class. From 8th in class, I moved up to second in class. Then in the third year, I got first position in class. And after that, with grace of God, throughout my rest of the 7 years, I was number 1 in not only just in my class, but in whole school, since there were a number of sections for each class. Now, I attribute my success in high school and subsequent impact on my life due to very positive feedback all around. My teacher was always proud of me, therefore the fellow students always looked up to me. This encouraged me to do a number of things. Having come from a political family, I somehow had been interested in public speaking from early age. So I got into debating society and I became a good debater and I got a number of awards. Then I also somehow became a reasonably good writer. In high school, this was one of the very unusual high schools that we had a high school magazine in Sindh, Pakistan. By the way, my older brother Ghulam Ali had been instrumental in establishing not only that magazine, but he had established a students' union for which there were regular elections. So again, I became one of the editors of the magazines, first of the Sindhi section and later of English section. So there was another positive feedback. I started to write articles in local newspapers. That was third form of recognition and so on. So the result was that I was walking on stars, so to speak. I was praised for my good grades, for my activities in public speaking, in writing, and probably many other things which I did not even deserve. So I was the role model, I was the student to look up to, and this came to play a very positive influence. At that time, I felt that I could do just about anything. This is also the period, unfortunately, that my health began to decline. And I would attribute to number of other factors, and part of that was that I was just a studious student. I was just reading my books in the sense that I would, after my third year in high school, when my fourth year started, I got my textbooks for fourth year during summer holidays. And believe it or not, I completed reading all my books for the coming year during the summer before I went to fourth class, in fact. So the result was that I knew everything before even the year started. Of course, that did not make me lazy. That would mean that I was ready to ask questions from my teacher from day one. And the teachers were sort of confused by that how did I know all that? How come I'm asking all these advanced questions? But they were also impressed. Another positive feedback. The thing was that even during the year, the school will be over at about 2 p.m. We would come home, have lunch, have a little bit rest. By 4 o'clock or so, I would start studying from 4 to 6. Then from 6 to 8, there will be dinner or meeting friends and so on. And again from 8 to 10 or so. So in those days when there was not much homework and I caught up about everything anyway, I was putting these extra hours. And that really meant sort of exponential standing in school with very little effort. But this is also the period when I should have spent more time on sports, physical activities, and I did not. Whenever I did get free time, I started reading romance novels, and I'm sorry to say even some sex novels, and this all had very bad impact on my health. But on the whole, I continue to progress well. The net result is that when we came to appearing for the final matriculation examination, I was sure, as my teachers were, that I will do very well indeed. Now, matric exam in Pakistan was done and was organized by university. In our case, Sindh University. So the students from high schools all over Sindh province would take the same test the same day, and the test lasted about 11 days. I remember I had to take 11 separate exams. Each of these was 3 hours. Now this is, as you can imagine, the sort of the pinnacle, the culmination of all the effort. Based on result of this examination, one would be able to go to the university, have a career that one wanted, etc. Now, my approach always was that before these exams, the night before, I will usually stop studying very early. By 5, 6 o'clock, I will be done in the evening, then have dinner and rest. By 9 o'clock or so, I will go to sleep, get up fresh in the morning, and go take the test. And that is exactly what I did the night before my first exam. Next day, I was going to have 2 exams, 2 3-hour exams. First one was in English, from like 9 to 12, and another was from 2 to 5 was general science. Went to sleep. Then in middle of the night, somebody woke me up. Somebody was calling my name and moving my limbs, and I opened my eyes, and it was my father waking me up. And I was surprised. And he said, "Son, your youngest brother at that time, Shaheen, is very ill, and you need to go and call the doctor to come home and check him. And I noticed it was about 2 a.m. And I got up, got dressed, got tanga, that is the horse carriage, which were freely available. I got into one, went to house of a doctor, and he would just not respond. I kept knocking on the door, and there were not bells in those days. I shouted his name. I believe it was Dr. Huck, who was our regular family doctor. He refused to come. I came back home without doctor. Then my father telephoned civil surgeon, who was the sort of the top government doctor. And fortunately, because by that time my father was an important man, he had already been elected member of the provincial assembly, and he was politically important. The doctor responded, and he said, okay, send transport and I will come. And I went there about 3 o'clock, brought the doctor, saw my brother, and then the doctor left. I don't know if I even took him back. But the result was, it was almost 5 o'clock in the morning when I came back to bed. So when it came time to go to test, I was totally sleepy. I did not know what was going on. And here was, I went to my test, and I literally did not know what I was doing. I got out of the exam hall, washed my face several times, and here was a test, really probably the most important test, school test of my career to date, and in a subject that I knew very well. And I did the best that I could, but I knew that I have not done well. 12 o'clock exam is over. I come home, have lunch, and I immediately fall asleep. We had a space on the roof of our house. I went there, and I went to sleep. I had no idea that there was going to be another test at 2 o'clock. And then I again noticed that about 2:30, my uncle was trying to wake me up. Turned out that 2 o'clock had come and I had not shown up for my second test. So the headmaster, who knew me well, he telephoned our home and said, "Where is Ali Nawaz?" And then they started searching me and found me sleeping. And then I hurried up. By the time, with the grace of God, I had enough sleep, washed my face, and got to the exam. So I got there maybe 3 o'clock. 1 hour had already passed. But the remaining 2 hours, I did really well. I knew my subject, and the exam went very well. And Alhamdulillah, all the other 9 exams went pretty well too. So the question was, now the exams will be over in like March, and then you have to wait until June, July, until the results will come, because this was uniform exam. So somebody at the university, Sin University, will get all these papers and have them corrected and announce a consolidated result. I was sure that I will still do reasonably well, provided I pass the English exam, and I wasn't sure if I will pass. Now remember, in those days in Pakistan, you needed 33% out of 100 to pass and to get third division. You needed 45% to get second division, 60% to get first division. And if you were really somebody, then you would get 75%, and that was called distinction. Well, the day of the result came, and it was supposed to be announced on radio, especially names of the top students. I didn't hear anything. And then I started getting phone calls and messages. And it turned out that I had secured the first position in whole of province. I can't tell you how happy I was. I cannot tell you how happy my family was and how thrilled my teachers were. And next morning, I remember one of the most respected teachers of our high school, Sharif Sahab was his name. He was teacher of mathematics. He came to our house and literally carried me on his shoulder, and we took a tanga, and he took me to high school. Wherever I passed, the people were clapping, because this was after many, many years that someone from government high school, Larkana, had secured the first position in the whole of province. There was General Assembly. I was asked to address the General Assembly, and then the headmaster announced that I will go to each classroom and I will talk to students. And when I had completed my round, then there will be general holiday for rest of the day. So this is how it happened. I went to each class, people were clapping, and some teachers hugged me, and this was possibly the most wonderful day of my life. Now and of course I would attribute all this to grace of God, positive feedback from my teachers, from my fellow students, and of course this positive feedback was based on good grades, good extracurricular activities in terms of literary works, in terms of debate, in terms of so many general things that go on. But this was also at the cost that I was really physically very weak at that stage. For that some reason, my weight was maybe 100 pounds. I had rotting teeth. I used to get toothache all the time. So here is that part of my life. Now let me talk about career choice. Now career choice is very important for everybody. How did I get to be where I am today in terms of my career development? I must tell you that my career has been in major zigzags. As I told you earlier, my father was an attorney and a political figure. I told you already that he was member of the Provincial Assembly. In 1955, he was sent to United Nations as a representative of Pakistan. Later, in 1962, he was appointed ambassador of Pakistan to Saudi Arabia. And so he was a very prominent man. And as I had said earlier, I really wanted to follow his career path. I liked his public relations. I liked the way people looked up to him, the way he interacted with people, the way he addressed meetings. And I also liked his legal profession, the way he dealt with criminal cases, civil cases. I used to read his folders. I knew what was going on in spare times, I even used to go to courtrooms and listen him argue cases. So this was what I wanted to do. Now, the day after my metric results were announced, this was a sort of the day when newspapers had come out with my picture and I was on top of the world. Here the whole family, my father, my uncle, my mother, my siblings, we all are sitting down for lunch, and subject came up as to what I should do now. I was asked, and I said, well, I would like to be an attorney, or advocate as you are called. My father and my uncle both were unanimous in saying, Ali Nawaz, this is not a good field. There is a lot of competition. There are too many advocates. Please don't do this. No. Find something else. Now, I must remind you that in those days, the two main other vocations were either be a doctor or be an engineer. So now, what to do? Now, from childhood, whether I succeeded or not, but I always wanted to serve people. I was very touched by the work that doctors did, the way they fixed people's eyes, the way they cured sick. I especially liked eye specialists, and I had seen many movies, Indian movies, where there will be blind hero and then he will be saved by some doctor and eyesight will be restored. So when they asked me for second choice in my career, I said, okay, I will be a doctor. I will be an eye specialist. And again, my father objected to that. He said, you know, Ali Nawaz, your older brother, Ghulam Ali, is already studying to be a doctor. So we already will have a doctor. No, choose something else. Well, the only thing to choose was engineering. And so I said engineering. And they said, yes, you are very good in mathematics and you have done well in science subjects, so you will be a good engineer. I think my fate was sealed for the moment at that time. I think it was a big mistake. But of course there is always a silver underlining. So I was packed off soon to Karachi. To this day, the most famous college in Karachi is DJ Science College. I got admission there and I came to study engineering. And I did reasonably well in DJ College. After 2 years of science studies, you have inter-science exam. But let me back up a little bit. When I got to Karachi for my exams, I was still receiving a lot of mail from people about my success in metric examinations. I remember one of the letters that I got from a classmate. His name was Khadim Hussain Larik. Khadim wrote a letter, basically which said, Ali Nawaz, are you an idiot? Have you lost your mind? I hear that you have gone to Karachi to study engineering. And he literally said, you bloody fool, you should be an attorney and you should be a public servant and a political figure. What are you going to do as an engineer? I'm amazed at the foresight and courage of Khadim Hussein Lark, because he could foresee, and based on what he knew about me, and he was not a close friend, but he did know me. We were in same class for 7 years. And may God bless his soul, he has recently passed away. But he had more conviction about me than I did. And of course, I did reasonably well in inter-science. I passed my examinations. And then I was going to start my studies in NED Engineering College. Now, it was around these days that one of my friends, Shafqat Jaffrey, who was not a top student, he was what you will call second-class student. He somehow got admission in a college in United States, college called Indiana Technical College, and he got admission to be an aeronautical engineer. And he persuaded me that, hey, Ali, why not go to United States and be aeronautical engineer? Of course, I did not know the first thing of what aeronautical engineering is, but I said, hey, man, maybe I'll be able to go to space and fly aeroplanes. That sounds good. And on top of that, I'll be able to go to America. I mentioned this to my father. I have already mentioned that by that time my father had been to United Nations. He had seen America. He was very impressed, and he fully supported my desire to go to America. And sure enough, I also applied to Indiana Technical College. Did not know the difference between a technical college and a university, and did not know the subject. My father, he got a 40,000 rupee loan to send me. May God bless my father's soul. He did so much for me, and this was certainly one of the biggest things that he did. He got loan, and I flew to United States. I will come to that detail later, but let me continue to talk about my profession. Came to Indiana Technical College, learned that this was a third-rate institution, was fortunate enough to immediately transfer to University of Illinois, and ended up getting bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. I got B+ grades, mostly on the strength of my mathematics, but I really did not understand electricity or electrical engineering. I was lucky to be selected by Motorola to come and work for them even before I graduated. So I had that job in my hand. The day I graduated, the next day I went to Chicago and joined Motorola. Now this is where I got my big break. If they had put me in their engineering department, I'm convinced, I would have been a total failure because I did not know first thing about engineering. But I have to thank my stars. They had a new president of Motorola Overseas Corporation, a guy called Charlie Baswell. And Charlie Baswell had a brilliant idea to expand Motorola telecommunications sales overseas. So he had hired two of us, myself and a Nigerian graduate from Purdue University, to come and join Motorola Overseas Corporation to become sales administrators. And the idea was that they were going to train us in marketing so that we will go and lead Motorola marketing effort. I will do that in Asia and he will do it in Africa. So from day one, I was put on in international sales. Now this is the time, and this was a job which opened my eyes to business. I never had any business education as such. I did not know M from marketing. But this is where, from day one, I started to learn. Now, as soon as I realized that this is also an available subject, and there are even degrees in business administration, I immediately got admission in evening MBA program of Northwestern University in Chicago. So in daytime, I did my work at Motorola as sales administrator. In the evening, I was taking courses in marketing and accounting and so on. Then I realized that if I was going to study part-time in the evening, it will take me 7 years to get MBA. And so after a year and a half, I decided to leave Motorola and go pursue full-time business administration education. I started looking for the cheapest possible college where I could get admission, and at that time what I could find was University of Oregon. So in fall of 1967, I arrived in Eugene, Oregon to start my MBA. Again, the 2 years of my MBA education were probably the best period of my life. Just like government high school Larkana, I was on top of the world. But I will come to my University of Oregon period later. Let me stick to my career. Now, after first year of MBA, and I was fortunate to have all A's during the first year, and one of the teachers had suggested that why don't I apply for summer job at the World Bank. I said, what is World Bank? Where is it? I was told it is in Washington. I said, why not? I needed a summer job. I applied. They wrote me back to say that they did not have summer job, but they had a young professional program, and that I may be able to apply for that, and which is what I did. And would you believe that by the time I did my second year of MBA, even before I got my degree, I had a job at the World Bank. So here, from my interest in law and politics, I got diverted to engineering, and I don't remember almost anything from what I learned in engineering. But that engineering degree and MBA in finance is what made my job at the World Bank possible. Turned out that World Bank had this young professional program. They were recruiting 16 persons a year at that time from throughout the world. Minimum qualification had to be either a PhD in a subject of interest to the World Bank or degrees in two different fields of interest to the World Bank. And because I had engineering degree and MBA, it made possible that I could be considered even without having a PhD degree. Other factors which were important was my year and a half at Motorola. They also want a practical business experience, and here that was. And on top of that, it was international sales experience. Third factor was, of course, grades. And wow, I had straight A's, 4.0 grade average at University of Oregon, MBA. Then on top of that, I was very lucky with my interviews. I hope I will talk about that later. So this is how my career began.